Hi there, and welcome to another episode of 411 Pop Culture, where real people talk about really everything. I'm your host, Justin Steele. One of my favorite childhood films, one that I still revisit at least once a year, is Jim Henson's 1986 musical fantasy film Labyrinth. I was still very little when it was released, but I can remember going to a toy store and seeing Labyrinth storybooks, comics, memorabilia, etc. In fact, only recently I finally acquired the Marvel Super Comic Edition of Labyrinth, which is amazing. And I can remember being a kid walking through our local convenience store that had a small collection of VHSs to rent. We didn't have a renter's card at this particular convenience, so I couldn't rent from there. But they had a copy of Labyrinth, and our video store did not. I would walk past the VHS case for Labyrinth and become mesmerized. I could feel the magic just from looking at the cover. David Bowie, Ludo, Huggle, Sir Didymus, the other Labyrinth creatures, and of course, Sarah in her ballroom sequence ball gown. Finally, a year or two later, my parents got a membership at this convenient, and I was able to at last watch Labyrinth. And I did, over and over again, until I drove my older brothers insane. But one thing that always nagged me was that the girl painted on the cover of the VHS and poster didn't exactly look like Jennifer Connelly. The likeness of David Bowie was clear, and of course the puppets, but something was off about Sarah. The hair was right, at least in the ballroom scene that was referenced, and of course the dress, but the face didn't look right. For years, I just assumed it was the artist's interpretation, or as I got older, figured it was probably a stand-in model. Then, a week ago, when I received my Marvel comic of Labyrinth, I took a closer look. I have a poster of Labyrinth and have seen the VHS cover for years. Something, though, about the mid-sized copy of this comic allowed me to see it all in a different light, and I was shocked by what I discovered. So, I'm sure many of you know that Jennifer Connelly plays Sarah Williams, the young girl abandoned by her actress mother and now living with her father, who has remarried and provided Sarah with a stepmother and stepbrother named Toby. The novelization by A.C.H. Smith, which I was obsessed with finding for years until finally receiving my copies, yes, copies of it. The novel goes into more details about Sarah's mother and her mother's boyfriend, who incidentally looks quite a bit like David Bowie. Jennifer Connelly's performance is now considered iconic and beloved by fans all over the world. At the time, much to Jim Henson's sadness, Labyrinth was not well received, but us younger kids who did not have much of a voice in the late 1980s knew what a magical film it was, and Labyrinth has definitely reached cult status now. We related to Sarah's jealousy and resentment of Toby and understood her need to get him back after making a terrible wish. We felt her nervous excitement with the mysterious Goblin King. We also fought through dangers untold and hardships unnumbered to take back the child he had stolen. Labyrinth is one of my favorite kinds of fantasy films, the kind in the vein of the Chronicles of Narnia or Harry Potter that dance in and out of our world and a fantasy world. And Jennifer Connelly was amazing as Sarah. Clearly, she wanted to have a critically acclaimed career, albeit with some hits and misses, but no matter the quality of the film, I was always delighted to see Connelly's appearance. I'm sure it is no secret that there were many actresses vying for the role of Sarah in Labyrinth. The film would not have been the same without Jennifer Connelly, but there were some interesting choices in the mix, such as Maddie Corman, who starred with Connelly in the teen drama 7 Minutes in Heaven. The kind of movie unlikely to see a theatrical release now, 7 Minutes in Heaven is a teen drama about three kids grappling with the complexities of growing up. Other actresses vying for the role included Helena Bonham Carter, Laura Dern, Yasmin Bleeth, Sarah Jessica Parker, Marissa Tomei, Ali Sheedy, Mia Sara, and Jane Krakowski. Each one would have been interesting to see, and each has gone on to have successful careers of their own in either television or film. But the three actresses closest to the role before Connelly came in were Jane Krakowski, Ali Sheedy, and Maddie Corman. Once Henson saw Jennifer Connelly, however, he knew she was the right choice. He was quoted as saying that she could act that kind of dawn-twilight time behind childhood and womanhood. That's easy to see. Maybe it's because I was so young when I first viewed Labyrinth, but even when I was much older, I was surprised to learn just how young Connelly was during filming. But jumping back to the present, I recently looked at the cover of Labyrinth and realized with shock that I knew, at last, who the model was for the poster. And I think it might suggest how much closer than we realized one of the top 3 actresses auditioning for Sarah got to the role. I've been a fan of Jane Krakowski for quite a while, but it was her role in the hit show 30 Rock that cemented my fandom. She was in the original National Lampoon's Vacation film, Ally McBeal, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and had a career in the theater with roles in such shows as Starlight Express. And as I look at the poster for Labyrinth, I am convinced that it is her face that was used for the image of Sarah. Old documentaries and clips suggest that Jennifer Connelly was chosen by Henson very late in the game. And it is possible that when artwork was being commissioned, one of the top 3 contenders for the role may have been even closer than we knew. Sure, the poster shows a brunette and Jane has a head full of golden blonde hair, but it could have been much easier to darken the hair for the poster than to redo the face. And at first glance, it is subconsciously very easy to just assume that it is Jennifer Connelly. Now, while I am pretty convinced that it is Jane Krakowski, I can see an argument to be made for either Mia Sara or for Marissa Tomei. One thing is sure. Since I was a young kid, I always recognized that the girl pictured in the cover art for Labyrinth did not quite look like Jennifer Connelly. And now, after years of watching Jane Krakowski on shows like 30 Rock or The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, it was hard to miss the resemblance to the Labyrinth poster when I received the Marvel comic book. Looking at the cover art that close up, I couldn't believe it. It solved a little mystery for me that has been in the back of my mind for many years. It's something about the shape of her eyes that really stuck out for me, and I feel like if Jane was a brunette, then there would never have been any doubt for any of us. Of course, it would just take a quick fix to darken the hair in the artwork. Again, I think that Jennifer was the perfect choice, and despite what some critics thought at the time, I think her acting is top quality. There is not a false note in her performance, and that is saying something, considering she had to spend much of filming acting against puppets and a green screen. But I am curious as to what you all think, not just about the movie poster, but also about the other actresses up for the role of Sarah. I think there could have been some interesting performances from Ali Sheedy, who had just finished up The Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire. Helena Bonham Carter always creates a unique character in whatever film she is in. At the time, Laura Dern had that all-American blonde look, and Mia Sara was just getting ready to do Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Who else would you have been interested to see in the role of Sarah, or if not in the role, maybe see a screen test of what direction they would have taken the character? But regarding the poster art, do you think it is Jennifer Connelly or Jane Krakowski, or one of the other actresses? Well, thanks everybody for joining me for another episode of 411 Pop Culture, where real people really do talk about really everything. I'm your host, Justin Steele. You can find me over at Wicked Horror or on Twitter at Wicked Horror Justin. As always, if you like what you're seeing, please hit that like button or consider subscribing. Take care.